Hello and welcome to today's historic Best of 3 deck tech and gameplay video on Dimir Affinity. Dimir Affinity, and really Affinity as a whole, usually is in the context of a card like Mirror Enforcer that has affinity for artifacts, where, as you can see from the tooltip, basically whatever the spell in question is has its colorless cost reduced by the amount of artifacts you have. So, to get the most mileage out of all of the affinity cards, we want to include as many artifacts as we can without sacrificing the deck's, functionality, for lack of a better word. So, we have a couple ways of doing this. We have just generally artifacts scattered all over the curve. Again, cards like Mirror Enforcer, Thought Monitor, Frogmite, and Refurbished Familiars are all artifacts themselves and also have affinity for artifacts. Again, all in service of getting a certain density of artifacts. We also have cards like Simulacrum Synthesizer, Baleful Strix, Ethereum Terramander, all artifact creatures themselves that, in addition to being an artifact count for our affinity cards, are just generally good cards in of themselves that can sort of help us survive while we're trying to set up our mid-game power spikes, from which we're trying to then translate that into an overwhelming board that ends the game in a turn or two. But besides our affinity cards themselves, all of which are artifacts, I guess with the exception of Thoughtcast, but that's more of a draw spell that has affinity. Besides the affinity artifacts themselves and other artifact cards that help to give us our artifact count that is sufficiently high, we also have the Seat of the Synod and the Vault of Whispers, basically artifact lands, in addition to our normal land base of just generally useful lands. These serve two functions, I should say. They do act as just regular lands that we can tap for mana like anything else. They also increase our artifact count, which again increases our amount of artifacts for the affinity card, which again lets us summon big scary boards. And that is basically all we're trying to do. We're just trying to get a huge mass of artifacts in the early turns to have mid-game huge spikes with loads of our affinity cards, and even like summoning big armies from a synthesizer. And in the mid-game turns, when we summon these big scary boards of our various dudes, we then want to end the game in a couple of turns with a sufficiently large and scary board. And if we can't do that, we always have a couple copies of Tezzeret to act as the top end of the curve here that sort of helps to close out the game, since most of these artifacts aren't the best in combat. So they can struggle to really finish a game, and a Tezzeret uptick can very easily be 6 mana, 7-8 damage over the top when your artifacts are no longer able to connect through. And that is honestly the basics of the list. Basically, play artifacts, play affinity creatures, vomit on board, attack, win, bleh. And like the land base we already talked about is pretty self-explanatory. Sideboard is equally pretty self-explanatory. Couple Bogart Trawlers for some graveyard hate that we can include in our deck at very little cost. Some Tainted Remedies for life gain decks. Ritual of Soot and Witch's Vengeances or the single Witch's Vengeance are all sweepers to help us stay alive. Couple of Noxious Grasps for the loads of white-based life gain decks, and the mono-green, the ever-present mono-green Devotion. Couple Negates is just general non-creature hate. A single Chameel, the Inner Sun, and an Nezahal Primal Tide for the counterspell heavy matchups. Both of these do pretty good things. Or pretty good in that if we go against a deck that can counter a lot of our spells, we can be in trouble, and both of these cards are good answers to those counterspell heavy matchups. Sneeze? Caught the sneeze. With that out of the way, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you like it. Subscribe if you like my grab bag of content and would like to see more in the future. And if you have any sort of questions, like I don't have X, what about Y, or other generally nice and or constructive comments, I'll do what I can to respond to what I see. With all that out of the way, we'll now go on to game number 1. And game number 1 with our Dimir Affinity list. And as always, we play first because we have a brain. This is perfectly fine. 3 lands, or 4 lands technically, but you know, equal mix of land and spells, things to do on the curve. Can't really ask for much more than that. Now, having no idea what our opponent's running, but I guess we'll get there. If they're doing anything. There we go. We'll go ahead. Well, hang on. I think we're actually going to do a Vault of Whispers so we can work towards the Refurbished Familiar. Play the Pteramander. Next turn we'll be able to... Right? Is that what we want to do? Yeah. Sink into Stupor. Paying 3. Refurbished Familiar. Again, vomiting out a lot of okay artifact creatures, building up our affinity count. Is it oh my god, Winota? I don't think I've seen a Winota deck, what? I want to say over a year? Alright, I don't know if it's good, but I am all about what our opponent's trying to do. Hell yeah. This might seem odd, but I think I'm gonna Shock in the Fellmire, and I'm gonna Ugin's Binding their Raptor first off. I don't want them to get any use out of the cost reduction or maybe the Enrage Enabler, because this card actually sees somewhat, you know, air quote, somewhat consistent play. And honestly, we're doing really good here. I don't think we need to dilute our game plan here. We are still trying to work towards getting an affinity count up, but they're missing land drops. They're clearly at least a 2-color deck, and they don't have access to the second color. So we're just going to fell the Profane and get rid of the Raptor. Again, keep slowing them down. Take every little advantage we can get. I've said this about the Modern Horizons Bolt lands. They're all super useful, super happy, they all exist. The 3 life is such a small price to pay for a fantastic amount of utility we can get. I couldn't play... Okay, Car. I couldn't play the Sink into Stupor even if I wanted to, so I guess it's better to work towards Tezzeret. No reason to tap, to shock it in. Play an Emery. Hang on. I cast it, so I can't get artifact lands, unfortunately, because you don't cast lands, you play them. Another Marauding Raptor. Okay, what was the Winota there for? Right? Put a human... Okay. It's odd. Don't know if I care. It's the only thing we can't hit anyway, so might as well do 1 Refurbished Familiar. Just attack their resources here. Getting another one. Of course, if we draw a land, we have a big scary Tezzeret. This is giving me more information here. Attack with the Pteramander, since it has flying. I think we can honestly largely ignore whatever they play. There's a Winota. Is it... Hang on. Non-human controls, top 6 of your library, human card from untapped attacking. Whenever creature control attacks a creature What? Hang on, what? Whenever a creature you control attacks, or a creature you control enters attacking, you may pay blah. If you do, put a creature card with mana value less than battlefield attacking. Don't think I care, right? Getting some life. Don't think that changes my game plan, right? Play the Simulacrum. Look for a land on top so we can actually make use of the Tezzeret. Frog Mites are cute, but I think the land is more important right now. Playing an Emery. Getting another Refurbished Familiar. They might cheat in a big scary thing with a Winota, but they've shown weird humans in their deck, so better to just get the Simulacrum Synthesizer online and start building a big scary board. We can now also block whatever is the big scary thing they happen to be attacking with, which is nice. They have one card in hand. Boros is not really a color combination known for card draw, so I don't think we need to super worry about it. They attack with their... from your hand? Well, okay, there's a thing you have. Much damage to any target. Deals 2 damage. Gets rid of a blocker. It's fine. Hang on. Do I just die? 3, 6, 9. I do just die, unfortunately. And that's like fine. Yeah, I don't think that super changes what we do here. I mean, honestly, Ritual of Soot wouldn't even really be the most helpful. Like, it'd be kind of helpful. I think I just run it. To be fair, there's an argument to be made that I could have / should have just set on the board and try to go over the top with a Tezzeret, and that's a fair point. Again, play first. Totally fine. And things to play. So yeah, if it comes to that situation, I think we're going to learn here. Or we're going to try to learn from our mistakes. And if we have the Tezzeret on the horizon, paying the 2 life for a Watery Grave to play the Terramander, if we have the Tezzeret on the horizon, we can sort of just lean more on that. But to be honest, their deck is very weird. Like, there's kind of a reason why Winota doesn't see a super amount of play anymore. But, oh well. Another sneeze coming. Maybe. I think we're okay. I guess we start building up affinity count. Let's go ahead and attack. Okay, we have a Tezzeret, so we can actually, you know, try and live the advice we give. And just sit on our artifacts and wait for the Tezzeret. They could bring in some... They're both red and white are good colors for getting rid of... for getting rid of artifacts, I was just thinking. You know what? Well, unironically, yeah. Yes, they can just play it again, but I'd rather force them to spend their mana. Placed again. Perfectly fine. Like, that's a good interaction. It's just not one you, even before, used to super see, even in Winota decks. More artifact lands. Go for a Thought Cast. Maybe try and find something to block with. Thought Monitor blocks. No point in saving the Terramander. It can only block things with flying anyway. If our opponent gives us a remotely decent block with the Monitor, we will use it. Ferocidon. I don't think the gaining life thing is the most relevant, but that's fine. Whatever blocks they give us, we take. I can't gain life anyway, so I was going to say the Inventor's Fair is not the most useful right now. So we'll play a Familiar. We don't have anything else to do, unfortunately. So might as well adapt the Pteramander. Again, can't block anyway, even if we wanted it to. Again, if they give us any remotely, like, okay block, then we get rid of it. Or we try to take the block. Sadly, won't be able to kill the Ferocidon, but again, we're just looking for whatever we can get here. We might actually just die. Our opponent could have a Winota and get some big scary thing, and I not be able to draw. Or like that just kills us. Wow, okay. I have to be honest. If you really think, yeah. If we're going to be honest, in the couple weeks of testing, I did not and have not run into a Winota deck. That is a weird dinosaur sub-theme, which is fine. It's one of those, yeah, sometimes you're going to lose. And to be fair, a Winota deck also is sort of kind of trying to do a similar thing, where having a couple early setup turns and then mid-game power spikes, and from that mid-game power spike, you're just generally trying to apply some pressure here. We did sort of flood somewhat kind of heavily here, which isn't great. If we would have had some more interaction or something, we would have been okay. And clearly, I made a bad call about the Ritual of Soot. Or even, I guess, a Rampaging Ferocidon with all the dinosaurs. Or not, a Witch's Vengeance for all the dinosaurs. I could have brought those in. I didn't think they'd run so heavily into the dinosaur thing. But, like, it clearly works for him. I just thought the Marauding Raptor was a ramp tool to get Winota on turn 3. Not a herald of the dinosaurs to come. But anywho, still a good showing for the list. And sometimes you are going to, you're going to lose. The deck isn't invulnerable. It's just really good and pretty fun. Anywho, on to game number 2. And game number 2 with our little Dimir Affinity list. And as always, we play first because we have a brain. And honestly, this is pretty good. Couple lands, some spells, things to do on turn 1, and kind of a curve. So we'll shock in the Watery Grave and play the Pteramander. Another one of those moments where... Or not another one of those moments. This is one of those moments where we're just trying to build up soldiers? Maybe blue-white. I guess we'll do the Fell the Profane first. Paying 3. Playing a Baleful Strix. What I was trying to say is that this is one of those moments where the affinity part is going to come later. We're just trying to build up the board with good artifacts and applying some pressure here and there. So, blue-white affinity, which is a thing. I mean, good on them. Can't really ask for much more than that. Honestly, yeah, we'll play the bridge. That's fine. Play another Baleful Strix. Now our Frogmite is 0, which is nice. Yeah, they can sacrifice their Thopter to make a big dude. And there is an argument that I should be running this card. It is a good card, but this is another one of those where I've said it before. Things. I don't question that it's good. The card's so common, it's just fucking boring now. It's a good card. It's basically a board in a box that requires very, very, very little of the deck builder to work. Kappa Cannoneer is pretty cool. What is it? Another artifact control. 1/1 counter on it. It can't be blocked. Cool. Don't think we're going to get a much cleaner block than that. How much is that? Ward 4 is a lot. Good on you, though. Good on you. So I guess we could do a Seat of the Synod. Yeah, let's actually... Yeah, we'll do a Thought Monitor. Why not? Draw some cards. Another Thought Monitor. Just start digging really deep and looking for it. Draw more cards. Take your card draw. That's fine. Playing a Frogmite. Yeah, we'll keep the Baleful Strix around, even if... Okay, it's technically possible they don't play an artifact creature, but they're gonna. Props to the Kappa Cannoneer. I didn't really think to run that in this list. I also think I only own, like, one of those cards. Gotta be honest. Also, have not run into, like, a mirror matchup. Okay, hang on. How do I do this? So... Solution. Seat of the Synod. Synod, again. I think we're going to Ugin's Binding their Esper Sentinel just to target something. Do I care about them taking their card? Pay the 1. Don't want to give them extra cards. Then we can do a Thought Cast. Then play a Mirror Enforcer, bouncing their whole board. Or not, well, yeah, basically their whole board. And really set them back. Go ahead and attack in and try and... Hey, there we go. Thank God for Ugin's Binding, man. That card is an absolute necessity in a list like this. This is awkward. I guess their Retrofitter Foundries and stuff would sort of imply that maybe a Ritual of Soot's pretty good here. Maybe a Terramander can go. And honestly, a Sink into Stupor is not that great here, so that can get cut. Since because they are also an affinity list, there's a real chance that most of the things we're going to bounce back into their hand are free or like 1 mana, and they can just cast them again with very little effort. Okay, that's fine. We'll keep that. A couple synthesizers are going to be pretty good for trying to develop an equally big and scary board to our opponent. They really mulligan down. I mean, Esper Sentinel is certainly a card. Play the Watery Grave since we don't have anything else to do this turn. Oh god. Anyway. The Springleaf Drum is weird. I actually don't think that's the greatest card in here. In a list like this. It's not bad, I guess. We'll go ahead and play the Stupor. Tapped, start slowly working up our synthesizer turns. Since I'd be very surprised if they're running a whole lot of artifact removal themselves. Guess we'll play a, yeah, Citadel first. Synthesizer. Take your card. Ugin's Binding is great. Another artifact land is honestly, yeah, those are great. Those are 2 fantastic things to draw into, honestly. Ornithopter Foundry? Kappa? There's the Foundry. It was Kappa Cannoneer. Okay, I was right. Okay, that does sort of change things here. So we're going to play, however, the Dark... Well... there's a good chance that this is actually going to be a little more relevant than you would imagine on paper. So or how we do this is going to be more important than you would think. So I think that our plan is we'll do an Inventor's Fair because I think the life gain is going to be more important than you would think. Do an Ugin's Binding on their Retrofitter Foundry, paying the 1 mana since we don't want them to have cards. Citadel next turn, or even a Seat of the Synod if we need to. Next turn if they happen to get rid of it. Totally fine. Darksteel. Okay, let me think this through. Okay, so if I could play 3. This down to 3. Down to 2. Bring this down to 1. So I should be able to do all the things in my hand. So we do a synthesizer first. Okay, hang on. Let me see here. Okay, if I pay the 1 mana, I hit the board. This hits the board. I'm going to be in the tank here for a second, folks. Hits the board. These go down to 0. If I pay 1, so the 3 goes down to 2, goes down to 1. So I should be able, if I do the math right, if the math is right in my head, I can pay the 1. Synthesizer sees the other one, makes a Karnstruck. Do me Thought Monitor on top so we can dig for another Ugin's Binding. First Frogmite and second Frogmite are both free. We'll get my Mirror Enforcer. We'll actually get my Mirror Enforcer down to 0 mana. So my math was extra right. And then we just play a big Mirror Enforcer turn, bounce their whole board, and they have 1 turn to respond to ours. Motherfucking booyah, baby! Fucking Ugin's Binding, let's go! Gotta be honest, also have not seen a mirror matchup like this. Granted, I have seen one like this more recently than I've seen a Winota list. But honestly, like, their deck is good. It's a good common deck. I honestly and sincerely believe that our version of the list is the stronger one, simply because we have more artifact land in the actual artifact lands than our opponent does. They just have Darksteel Citadel, and I believe they have a blue-white bridge whose name I can't remember. We just have more artifact lands, therefore our density of artifacts for Affinity is higher. Kappa Cannoneer is a weird one. There's an argument to be had that maybe I could be running this, or if you don't have, or if you don't have like 4 Thought Monitors and you have a couple Kappa Cannoneers, then go ahead and like replace them. I only have like 1 and wild cards are tight, so I'm not burning it on an okay card. Although, one more thing before we go. I guess if you don't have Tezzeret and you don't have the Mythics floating around, but you have a couple Kappa Cannoneers, you could actually probably run a Kappa Cannoneer as a sort of replacement way to sort of go over the top, or in this case, I guess, under with its not be blocked clause. Anywho, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you like it. Subscribe if you like my grab bag of content and would like to see more in the future. And if you have any sort of questions, like I don't have X, what about Y, or other generally nice and or constructive comments, I'll do what I can to respond to what I see. And remember, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together.